We recently hit yet another huge milestone here at the Cyberwork Podcast, 25,000 YouTube subscribers. Thanks to all of you who watch and listen each week, to those of you who watch the YouTube videos go live and chat with each other in comments, and to everyone who is helping us to grow this great community. To give back, we're now giving you 30 days of team training for teams of 10 or more. Your Infosec Skills account will help your entire team develop their skills and earn CPEs through hundreds of IT and security courses, cloud-hosted cyber ranges, hands-on projects, skills assessments, and certification practice exams. Plus, you can easily monitor, assign, and track training progress with team admin and reporting features. If you have 10 or more people who need skills training, head over to infosecinstitute.com/cyberwork or click the link in the description to take advantage of this special offer for Cyberwork listeners. And thank you once again for listening to and watching our podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you coming back each week. And on that note, I've got someone I'd like you to meet, so let's begin the episode. Welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast. Each week, I sit down with a different industry thought leader, and we discuss the latest cybersecurity trends, how those trends are affecting the work of Infosec professionals, while offering tips for those trying to break in or move up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. We're going to be talking about red team operations again today, as this is a listener favorite, and there's always a lot to say about the subject, and we've got a great guest with whom to discuss it. John Cartrett of the SpiderLabs team at Trustwave leads clandestine-style operations and simulated attacks on organizations to help them find their least expected, most dangerous vulnerability points and tighten them up. Despite being a newly hot practice that a lot of people are just getting into, John has been red teaming for 5 years now, with another 13 years under his belt of IT experience and other forms of offensive testing. Because listeners are always asking us about how to get started in red team, because it obviously sounds, very exciting, in what they need to know to get on that ladder. We're going to talk about career strategies and skill sets, but I wanted also to know a bit about whether anything has changed or will now change in the light of the current global COVID-19 pandemic, and whether it's even possible to red team with staffs currently scattered and isolating at home. And whether this change in business practice and the economy will change the nature of red teaming in the years to come. So I got a big docket today. Look forward to it. John is a principal consultant and the red team lead for the SpiderLabs team at Trustwave. His responsibilities mainly include managing all red team services in the Americas from start to finish, as well as being a subject matter expert on red team services globally. He has 18 years of information technology experience and 10 years in offensive testing experience, with at least 5 years focused on clandestine-style red teaming. He has directed and executed close to 100 full-scope red team operations for organizations of all sizes and geographic locations. He has obtained many certifications from organizations such as Microsoft, Cisco, GIAC, and Offensive Security, as well as attended thousands of hours of skills-based training. John, welcome to the program. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
So I want to start the show, and especially with a guest like you, about hearing the roots of your interest in computers and security. So this is obviously kind of an obsession for you. Did this start very early on in life?
So I would say that I've always been interested in, kind of how things work. And I was notorious as a youngster in breaking things because I wanted to understand how they worked. I would take them apart. And a lot of times you wouldn't put things back together. It's always easier to break things, right? So right. I would say that curiosity really started at a young age. I didn't get my first computer until I was probably about 9 years old. And, I did kind of the normal stuff, trying to kind of figure it out, take it apart, look at the stuff on the inside, put stuff together, upgrade components when I could, and mainly just kind of play video games and whatnot with my folks and by myself. I did a little bit of coding, but nothing that really kind of took off from that standpoint that kind of launched me into IT career or even the security career. And personally, I wouldn't say that that was really a launch bed for me to kind of get into IT. Later on in life, kind of after high school, I got an IT job, and that's kind of when, for me, things kind of took off, right? Before then, I kind of almost saw computers as a hobby, even though I'd seen lots of hacker movies and thought that was really cool. And
it was entertainment at that point.
Yeah, right. I visited lots of hacker blogs and kind of read through some of the things, but for me, it just kind of didn't take off from that perspective until I got my first IT career and really got my first certification back in XP, as that kind of dates me a little bit. And from there, it was that journey of knowledge, right? Jumping from one certification to the next. As you said in the intro, I've done tons of education stuff, and I've even taken more or studied more things than I've actually taken certifications for, simply because I love to learn. I love to understand things. And especially in my IT career, whenever I was met with a problem for something, I didn't want to reach out and ask somebody to fix it for me. I would want to research it to figure out, how do I make this thing work? It can't be rocket science. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's kind of what has led me into the career that I'm currently in today.
Okay, so what brought you specifically to sort of attack focused pen testing and red team operations? Was there something about the thrill of the hunt that brought you in this career direction?
Yeah, for sure. Right.
Yeah.
So for there again, it was very much a slow transition, right? It wasn't like one day I woke up and I'm like, I want to be a hacker.
Right. Right.
I started off in the standard IT help desk administration and kind of moved into servers and networks. And networks, I think, is really where the security focus kind of took hold for me. As I started, paying attention to network traffic and looking, deep into packet analysis kind of stuff, really trying to kind of look at IDS type stuff and all that kind of stuff is really what got me interested in looking at the hacking tools themselves to see what they would look like on the network. And from that perspective, that's what kind of launched me into, my security career. At first, I was focused on IDS type stuff, SOC analysis type stuff, and that's kind of where I really kind of got my roots. And Infosec was focused on that, where it was sitting behind a SIM, an ArcSight SIM, and kind of looking at the information that flows in and out of that stuff, trying to kind of find malice. And while managing, like a NIPS device, looking at things that it said this was an actual attack, and trying to kind of, unroll those things and actually look at the endpoint device that it's saying was being attacked. It became very interesting that was almost like a puzzle of, well, look at this, if you do this with this particular web service, all of a sudden you see a bunch of documents on it that you shouldn't be able to see or whatever. Right. And from that point is where I really got interested in the whole hacking thing, looking at the different hacking tools. And I, like probably a very few in the industry, started off with the CEH certification, which at that time, and honestly, I think there's value in that one because it gives you that transitional knowledge between being an IT admin to what a hacker kind of is. And from there, it was like, this is awesome. And, the rest is history, and I can't get enough of it.
So there's a lot of sort of close variations of what you just described, sort of active versus passive, hacking and ethical hacking and so forth. So for those of us coming to the topic, what specifically is a red team, and how does it differentiate from, say, white hat hackers or pen testers or vulnerability researchers or other areas?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of those things you talked about have very specific things, like vulnerability research, right, is very specific to finding vulnerabilities and documenting those things for whatever reason, right? There's a lot of motivation that goes behind vulnerability research, but it's very specific to finding flaws in different types of software, right? If you move up the stack and kind of into the pen testing realm, you're specifically looking for those vulnerabilities in software, not from a research perspective, but more from you're looking for known vulnerabilities, right? To be able to compromise those and just kind of see where it takes you, right? But a pen test is very vulnerability focused, for a lack of better terms. Especially in a non-goal-based pen test, you can think about it as almost like a vulnerability assessment with exploitation, right? And because that's kind of the goal, is to weed out the things that aren't interesting for the organization and tell them these are the things you should focus on to fix, right? Whereas a red team is really goal focused and is more specifically outcome focused, right? And it's outcome focused via the clandestine-style operations, right? Meaning that the organization has identified a certain set of goals through what we typically call nightmare scenarios. Saying, if XYZ happened to my organization to be completely catastrophic, one side of a red team, we basically try to make that stuff come true. Without being detected. The mantra there with a red team, which is different from a pen test, is, if we get caught, we go to jail, right? I mean, that's all within reason, simply because red team is kind of a flavor of adversary simulation, but there's always budget constraints, right? So an organization can't pay us enough money for us to act or simulate a true nation state, right? So I always consider ourselves a emulated cybercrime group, for a lack of better terms. But even then, the amount of effort that you can really bring to bear against an organization really depends on the amount of budget that they have. So, and typically you will operate, in those guidelines, as efficient as you can, in those guidelines, but ultimately it kind of comes down to that.
Right. Okay. So that, I mean, I love hearing that because, we've had several, red teamers on our show. And I feel like we've gotten kind of a spectrum of responses in terms of what you just said, which is basically how far can you go,
Right.
and budget's a consideration and ethics are obviously a
Yep.
consideration. Like you can't kidnap the CEO, but like, what are what are some of the things that you can, realistically do that you wouldn't be expected to do? Or I guess, what is your take on,
Right.
this spectrum of sort of acceptable behavior, and how do you sort of establish it with the organization's
Yeah.
employees?
So in jest, I've actually made that comment multiple times to people, and to date, nobody has ever signed on the dotted line to give us authority
No.
to kidnap their CEO.
Sure.
They always laugh like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "If you sign on the dotted line and you give me authority, sure, we'll give it a go." You know what I mean?
Right.
But
Right.
the most important thing, like you said, is ethics, right? So the difference between us and the other side, the black hat guys, is intent, right?
Right.
We're not here. We don't have the same intent that a criminal does, right? We're not here to deface things, to destroy things, to cause harm. At the end of the day, we're security professionals, and we're here to make organizations more secure tomorrow than they were today, right? And by us causing harm, that doesn't do anything for the organization. In fact, it hurts the organization, right? So typically what we will do, and very rarely do organizations want us to really exercise access that we have to, especially mission critical things, right? So we've done, red teams for government entities. We've done red teams for critical infrastructure organizations, for a whole host of different organizations that have mission critical assets, right? And very, very, very rarely do they actually want us to do anything or to manipulate those systems. Most of the time, it's just show that you have access to it. So basically, my analogy is this. They want us to walk up to the door, open the door, and take a screenshot that, hey, look, we could have walked in or we could have done
Right.
something to anything that's in that room, but we're not actually going to do that, right? In most cases, that does two things, right? So it removes the possibility that we're going to cause harm by accident, but also it allows them to kind of control budget, because instead of us having one specific goal to focus on, we can actually do maybe a couple things.
Hmm.
Like prime example, when you talk about extreme siloed, as in you're super focused, laser focused on a specific goal, you would look at something like Stuxnet. Think about the amount of money and time that they poured into building that thing, and it was laser focused on this one goal to do this one thing. That's not realistic from a corporate perspective. You know what I mean? So
Right.
typically, when we have red teams, we always try to limit the amount of goals that they want us to do, and we kind of set
Yeah.
expectations on what we have time to do based on how much budget we have.
Right.
But ultimately, it's we'll start with a single goal and we'll take it down from there. And by stopping at the point of access and not actually going through it, we're able to actually complete more goals and show more value to that organization by not spending the time to really understand that particular system, how to manipulate it, how to operate in it without being detected, all that kind of stuff. But every once in a while, we do have clients that had the extra budget, or they're really laser focused on, yeah, so if somebody does get access to this, what are the implications of? And typically those come from or off the heels of a pen test. Like they had a pen test and the pen tester
Right.
says, hey, look, we could have compromised this thing. And they're like, well, could you really? Do you have expertise to actually do something with this thing? And we've had some custom scenarios
Hmm.
like that where they're super focused on not just getting access, but actually doing something, or actually exfiltrating data or those types of things.
Right. Okay.
Um, so
That's a really good point of comparison. And sometimes have a hard time clarifying in my mind the difference between a red teamer and a pen test, other than obviously the sort of fun of it. But yeah,
right,
the point that a pen
yeah.
tester can see the vulnerability, but might not necessarily have the skill to sort of act on it, or actually pull the data or whatever. I guess that's a
Sure,
really
and definitely with pen testing, you don't have time to do that kind of stuff, especially when
right.
it comes to custom stuff, because most pen tests are short in comparison to red teams, but even red teams are short in comparison to true adversary simulation.
Okay, so without giving any secrets of your trade away or your big tricks or whatever, what are some of the common methodologies that red teams regularly employ in their work? And like, sort of, where do you get started? Like when you're, okay, so it's like day one, 0 day, whatever, and we got to hit this place. Where do you start? Do you start like throwing, thumb drives in the parking lot? Do you start, like what,
Yeah.
what's the usual starting point, and where does it sort of escalate from there?
Right. So the most important thing from a red team operation is really being slow and methodical, right? And I would say that depending on what avenue we're going to start on, really depends on what type of operation an organization has purchased, right? So from our perspective, we've got multiple different flavors of red team, right? They're just like any other, pen test, if you will. They have multiple different flavors. So we have a full scope red team that kind of is all inclusive from an electronic perspective. We also have a add-on piece that is the physical piece where we'll have a couple consultants come on site and do clandestine reconnaissance and all that kind of stuff. And then we also have just an internal piece where we consider an assumed breach, where the client seeds us with access and we test a specific variant. But it's almost like we realize the breach ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So depending on where we start in that chain is kind of dictates, I guess what the first activities. But all of our activities, regardless of kind of where we physically start, all starts with research, right? Is we really have to understand the organization, the people, and the technologies that are in play so that we know exactly what to bring to bear. The other thing is that we always want to know, because we're security professionals, right? I personally believe that we shouldn't bring to bear a level of sophistication that is above what the client truly needs. Meaning, if a client purchases a red team and they're relatively new to the red team space, maybe this is their first, or maybe it's only the first couple that they've done, and they don't have a lot of sophisticated technologies, or they don't have an internal SOC, those types of things, then it's really not fair for us to come in and do our most sophisticated stuff. They don't see anything, and then we're like, look, we stole all your stuff, and you're in bad shape, right? I mean, if their C-level suite doesn't see a point to paying for security, and the internal security teams aren't getting budget, then the shock and all type engagement where they get punched in the mouth and they realize, wow, I didn't have a plan, is fine, right? We consider those grudge red teams, and we get those kinds of things, and those usually give really good traction to the internal teams. But for most people, right, it's about maturing that organization. It's not about just showing them how bad they suck.
Right.
It's helping them move forward, right? And the most cordial way to do that is to kind of ratchet it up, right? So in those particular things, that really kind of dictates, once we understand the organization, understand the types of people they have in play through open job recs or resumes posted to career sites, those types of things, as well as any technology that we see, especially via partnerships, we kind of get an understanding of typically how big the organization is, how many Infosec staff they have, and then based on the titles and stuff and technology that's in play, we can kind of guess at how mature they are. And based on that, we'll kind of know how sophisticated that we should be for this particular organization, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we always want to win, right? Regardless from a selfish perspective. But but we also, at the same time, we want to win in a way that has the absolute most value for our clients, right? And that's kind of the way that we try to operate from that perspective.
Okay, so what is sort of like the average time frame of like a full scale red team thing? I think I'm imagining in my mind something like laser tag, where everyone's just like running and on top of each other and stuff. But I realize it's a longer game than that, right? It's not,
so
paintball,
the bare minimum that we will do a full scope red team is a month, and they very quickly become 3 to 6 months to a year long with the adversary simulation type stuff. And the reason is because if you were to break a red team down, it's basically just a bunch of little pen tests kind of stuck together, for lack of better terms. Like you've got a section where you're going to do that research, open source intelligence gathering type phase, where you're just trying to kind of understand who's in the ring with you, right? The second phase is once you come out of that information or that phase, you're going to have DNS host names that are owned by that organization. You're going to have potential IP space that's owned by that organization. You're going to have a list of usernames, of emails, of all that kind of stuff from an employee perspective. And you're going to start enumerating and looking for services and kind of open stuff and validating the information you found, and really kind of start that internet attack phase. In tandem, typically we'll start the social engineering phase, where we initially just want to kind of open a dialogue with people internally. Like, we're not going to just lob a spear phishing email, with a payload directly at somebody for the first time, right? Because a lot of times people are going to be like, I don't know what this is. I'm not clicking that link, or I don't know what this document is.
Yeah, because they're under the spotlight anyway.
Yeah, exactly, right? So what we do is during the OSINT phase, we'll look for opportunities to open a dialogue with a person. Like, if there's a person that is interested in puzzles or cars or stamps or whatever, and we find that on a blog or a forum, we know that we can potentially communicate with that person directly about this thing. Or there's some other different types of things that we have come up with that allow us to interact with people in a way that they don't distrust immediately. Like, prime example, HR people and recruiters are always looking to hire new people, so they're always interested in talking to new candidates, right? So any relationship like that where an untrusted person can talk to a person and there's immediately a level of trust are the things that you can really take advantage of. And that's usually the types of things that we start. So I would say that the second piece is really looking at the internet attack surface stuff, looking for all opportunities, and then also kind of starting the social engineering piece, and it kind of leads into that. And that's usually one of those two things is usually what brings up or allows us to breach an organization, right? That's typically where the breaches come from.
So, is if you're on a red team for a certain company now, you're saying that these could be 3 to 6 months to a year long. Are your red team members working on sort of multiple red team operations at once, or if you get a red team job for 6 months, is that your only job in the company at that time, or do you have to sort of like stop it and then work on other things as well?
So typically the way that we do that is it's almost like a pot, right? We put all the clients kind of in a pot, kind of in a tandem, and we will do research on individual things. Like, one of us is interested in OSINT. We're going to be focused on a couple of weeks or whatever till we get bored with it. OSINT, looking at all the different aspects of a specific organization, right? Until we find something that's interesting. And as soon as we find something that's interesting, we'll kind of run that to ground to see how far we can take it. The same is also true. We have guys that monitor, GitHub repositories and follow different guys in the industry. And when new tools or techniques are released to blogs or whatever, we'll have that time to kind of weaponize those things. And then as those are weaponized, ready to go, we'll add those to specific scenarios that are potentially already in the works, and we'll kind of sling that at the wall to see what sticks. It's very opportunistic at that point when you're talking about that length of an engagement, which is exactly what a true adversary does, right? Because they're very opportunistic. They send out spam emails, and if somebody clicks on it, then like, yay, I've got a shell, and I'm gonna run with it, see who it's connected to, right? The same is also true. We do research, and as we come out with new tools or new techniques, or look at old stuff, and they're like, well, if we tweak this in this manner, I wonder what would happen. And then all of a sudden you have a new technique. It's like, well, let me see if this bypasses XYZ. So there's a lot of research that kind of goes into those types of activities to make sure that when you pull the trigger, those things aren't detected, or at least there's a higher likelihood that they're not.
Okay. So what types of companies employ red teams to try and attack their defenses? I mean, it sounds like you said that there's kind of a wide variety. You have the sort of grudge things where you're trying to sort of get through the C-suite, the importance of it, but there's also the sort of laser focus. So sort of like what kind of industries, what types of companies, and sort of where are they in their sort of cyber posture that they need to go to a red team next?
I've been asked that several times, and I don't know that I personally can identify a pattern because I've done red teams for organizations all across the spectrums that, and it's almost like every time that I do one, I think, oh, okay, well, sometimes I expect, this type of organization to do it. And then I have other times I'm like, I totally wouldn't have expected this. I mean, I've done red teams for, small private owned organizations that have really, really deep pockets and have 100 people on staff. I've done red teams for small organizations that are, part of the government or branch of the government. For local and state government. And, there's a finite budget for those types of things. I've done red teams for multinational financial organizations that are, in like 150 countries, 130 countries, something like that, have millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars in security budget. And have way too many people to count. And typically those kind of environments are almost like a bowl of spaghetti once you get on the inside, right? It's like, I have no idea where I'm headed,
God, I can imagine, yeah.
So, and then to also speak about the grudge matches, like we have done red teams for organizations or umbrella organizations as they've purchased or they are in the process of purchasing subsidiaries. Because the subsidiary is like, yeah, we're secure. And the parent organization is like, well, we're going to buy a red team to see if we can validate that, right? We've also done ones for organizations that typically wouldn't do them, but the internal audit has decided that they don't trust IT and they want us to do a red team to kind of validate the stuff that's coming. So it's like it's been all over the spectrum, and I've personally done red teams in tons of different verticals, and everybody that I talk to that is kind of a peer, it's kind of the same thing, right? Especially now it's become a buzzword, and as more people are interested in it, I've had a lot more conversations around it. And some of those people, they say they want a red team, but then when you start talking about the level of effort, the money, and all that stuff that goes into it, they're like, whoa, that's not what I was expecting it to be. And honestly, what they're wanting is just a pen test, right?
Yes.
So it's becoming kind of a muddy term, like you kind of alluded to at the beginning, much as like what pen testing did whenever it first came out, right? Initially, it was and honestly, red team is almost kind of a return to what pen testing once was in the beginning.
Okay.
And then it became very commoditized, and I assume that red team will probably at some point become very commoditized and kind of the same thing, and we'll have to come up with a new term or some other way to differentiate the cool elite stuff that some of the part of the industry does.
Okay, well that jumps into my next question, or something I thought of while you were saying that is, do you have examples, or does it happen commonly where someone comes to you and says, we want a red team thing, and you see the state of their security and you're like, you just need a pen test, like you need to get your house in order before we start doing this kind of like upper level stuff? Is it because red team is such a sort of sexy term right now? Do you find that people are ordering red teams on their company when they really just need to sort of like get it together first?
I mean, so if you just look at somebody's, state of security, sometimes you're going to miss a chance to really show value to that client, right? And from our perspective, because I'm part of a consulting wing, security company, that's our main focus, right? Is about value to the customer. It's not just about doing cool things and doing cool hacks and that kind of stuff, right? So, there are times that I've done over my career where I've done engagements that I would consider not fair. But ultimately, it motivated the organization to really see where they were at, to really get buy-in. There's one that comes to mind immediately. There's a really, really big organization, and they spent lots of money on lots of things, but security wasn't one of those, right? And they internally, they thought that they were, they had an internal risk department and whatnot, and had a few people in IT and few people, quote unquote, security hats, and few people in IT risk. And they truly thought they were at, if I was to give them a score, at an A, right? In fact, they asked me after I was doing the debrief, if you had to give us a letter grade, where would you put us? And I thought for a second, and I said, it would either be a C+ or a B-. And, there were some people that were truly shocked, at that outcome. And it's because they had this kind of false sense of security that I guess they didn't think they had been breached, and they were spending money on IT, and they were really focused on, from an IT perspective, was about, like the 5 nines. It was all about uptimes and SLAs and those types of things, but it wasn't really about security. And they just figured that they were, I guess, secure and that. But if you looked at their IT security, like it was, this was an engagement that we did relatively recently. They had security like the companies did back in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? So from that perspective, it really wasn't a fair engagement, but it was one that delivered value because of the outcome of the engagement. And there again, like I said, we only bring the level of sophistication that the client is really ready for, right? So if they're willing to pay for the engagement, though I would say the one plus side that you see out of a red team that you're not going to get out of a pen test is there's a lot more hand holding in a red team, right? Because with a pen test, they're very short. You're only going to get to spend, a week, 2 weeks, with a consultant. You're probably only going to talk to them a handful of times. And then you're going to get the report. They're going to do a debrief and then kind of move on, right? Because that's the nature of pen testing, right? But with red team, you're going to be with us for at least 4 weeks, if not 5 weeks, and not longer, right? And throughout that process, we will be as collaborative as the client wants to be. We do have clients that come to us and they're like, we want complete black box, zero knowledge, hack us like the real hackers do, kind of nonsense, right? And yes, we can do that, but the client isn't going to get as much value out of that as if there's a collaborative approach. I myself and most of my colleagues were teachers, right? And any chance that we get to be collaborative and to truly teach the internal organization, to be able to talk to the internal defenders and show them what we're doing, we love to do that as long as it doesn't compromise our forward trajectory inside of their environment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to talk to you, because you talk about, being former teachers and sort of like your backgrounds. Obviously this is the Cyber Work podcast. We want to talk about the sort of work side of this. So for people who might be interested in transitioning towards red teaming, either from other forms of security or even just other industries, what types of experiences or skills should they be building up to appear competitive in the resume pile? Are there any soft skills, hard skills that they should be focusing
Sure.
on to get your attention?
So for me personally, like I mentioned earlier, I'm very much an advocate of learning. I've personally always been a person that loves to learn. Like when even as simple as TV, I don't watch a lot of TV, but when I do, I watch shows that I feel like I walked away with something. You know what I mean? I'm
Right.
a big history buff, a big science buff, those kinds of things.
Sure.
So for me personally, it's all about education and moving forward, because in red teaming, specifically red teaming, but I guess infosec and pen testing is really kind of along the same vein. It's a fast moving industry, and there's always something to learn. And if you as a person don't demonstrate that you have a willingness to learn, you're probably not going to excel at red team, right? Because there's always some new technique that's come out that you have to research and understand. There's always a new target or a new piece of software that you have to understand how to manage or whatever. Or even at minimum, right? You have to learn or research the organization to truly understand where their attack surface is and where the chinks in the armor may be, right? So if you don't have that that kind of motivation to be a self-starter, a self-learner, then you're probably going to struggle from a red team perspective.
Okay.
The second thing I would say is really technical skills, right? And no one red teamer is going to be good at the entire chain, right?
Right.
I would say most of the red teamers, especially if you're talking about a small shop versus a big shop, right? The bigger the organization is, the more compartmentalized the different steps become, and the more specialized each one of the operators become. Like, for instance, if you're talking about kind of going back to the nation state stuff, which is what everybody tries to say that they're modeling. Those organizations are highly specialized. Like, you have people that are just about finding vulnerabilities. You have people that are just about exploiting vulnerabilities. You have people that are just about implanting, rats and those types of things. And then people that are about lateral, and it's very, very specialized. And the larger the organization becomes, the more specialized things will become. Typically, you'll see red teams where people will wear multiple hats. Like, they'll be really good at OSINT and really good at social engineering, or they'll be really good at physical, really good at wireless, or they'll be really good at spear phishing emails and maybe password spraying, attacking external stuff or whatever, those types of things, right? And then you have guys that are really good at lateral and those types of things. So the larger the shop is, the more specialized they will become, and those job recs will reflect that, right? They'll be looking for a specific set of skills or a handful of skills that, for instance, if you have a decent sized team and you're lacking in web skills, like let's say you have all these guys that are good at all these things, but we don't really have like a real developer, on the team who really knows how to tear stuff apart, then I'm going to be like, I need a red teamer who has web skills, right? But in a smaller shop where people are kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, if you will, then it's really about being a senior pen tester who is good at doing, an advanced level pen test all by themselves. They can usually fit well into a red team.
It's an interesting point. Now I'm wondering if that sort of could be beneficial for our listeners in the sense of, like, if you're already working in an aspect of tech, say you're a web developer just making websites or whatever, that if you sort of add that extra level of, well, how can I do it in a way that's can be an attack vector, then you already have the skills you need. You just need to add that extra layer. If you're a marketer who does blast emails, you might know social engineering really well, things like that.
Yes. So 100% that. There was a quote that I heard years ago, is that it's easier to turn a developer into a web application penetration tester than it is to turn a pen tester into a developer. You know what I mean? So if you understand the mindset or the technology that you're looking at, it makes it easier to attack. Like you said, you touched on it. It was a great example. Sales guys and marketing people make the absolute best social engineers. Salespeople that are used to talking to people face to face. It's much easier. They're more natural to be able to flip that switch and start lying to people when they're talking to them than it is somebody who's like, first I got to get over the fear of actually talking to people, and then I got to figure out how to lie to them. Oh wait, do they see it on my face? Is it written all over me? So, and same thing with like web stuff. if you as a developer understand the code and can write the code yourself, it's going to be easier to tear that stuff apart. You're going to be able to look at the application and go, wait. See that function right there? I know exactly what that's doing on the back end. Where somebody who's just a network pen guy, they're going to be like, I don't know, I fuzzed it and it didn't do anything. You know what I mean? So
right.
there's a deeper level of knowledge there that comes to bear. And honestly, it's, especially with red teaming, the biggest hurdle to getting into red teaming is the mindset, right? Especially if you're doing like what the correct part of the industry considers red team. It's not like this is just a pen test, right?
Right.
And the mindset is what I talked about earlier, right? If I get caught, I go to jail. And that's the easiest, or I guess not really the easiest. That's the hardest part of red team to kind of get over, especially if you already have, a senior set of skills, regardless of where it comes from, like marketing or development or just pen testing in general, right? It's that mindset of, if I do this action, what types of logs does it generate, and what's the visibility on that particular action, right? That's the hardest thing to kind of overcome. But once you overcome that, then all of your other skill sets that you've gotten from the rest of your industry or the rest of your experience comes to bear.
So, when we started planning for this interview about a month ago, I was simply excited to talk to John Cartrett, red teamer. But obviously things have changed a bit in the last month. So can we talk a little bit about red teaming in the present day? I'm guessing that, the concept of a comprehensive red team attack is harder to do or different to do now that the world's taken this particular turn. Is red teaming even possible in the age of COVID-19 and hunkering down? And does your practice change?
So it's changed a little bit, but almost in an unnoticeable way, right? I would say the biggest challenge is going to be any of the on-site work. So we're not typically scheduling, any the on-site or the physical portions of the red team, right? So there's no physical breaches happening because locations are shut down, right? They don't have people there to kind of liaise on that type stuff, and then any type of red team that where the client wants us to come on site to actually do those types of red team operations. That small piece of it is something that we're not currently doing in the current climate, right? But everything else, the current cyber attacks on the internet haven't stopped.
Right.
The true adversaries and bad guys haven't given up.
Yep.
If they have to, they're going to slightly modify their attack techniques and continue to operate, right? So like the other thing is that in times of stress, those things present new opportunities, like COVID, right? Now everybody's freaking out. They're reading everything they can about COVID.
Yep.
That's another way for people to, or adversaries to send out notifications that people will immediately trust, so they can take advantage of that stuff. And you've seen that in the news where, in fact, even the WHO was attacked, right? And they were trying to get data out of the WHO, and that's because of the whole COVID-19 thing, right? It brings new opportunities. But I would say 90% to 95% of our red teams are all remote electronics based. So, and in my particular industry, most of us work from home anyway. So life is kind of business as usual. You know? So we're going to continue to operate the same way we would if COVID-19 had never happened. The only difference that I would say that comes into play is that when you're dealing with individuals now, they're going to be on, their home networks at home. And you have to, from a security professional perspective, you have to be a little more careful. Did this employee open this particular, payload on a home computer that they're just using, via like Outlook Web Access, right? Am I on the corporate network, or am I on an asset that's connected to the corporate
their own
network?
Device? Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, we have been doing that for years. With like anytime that we can put in environment variable checks, we will do so. And we'll look for things like, is this computer joined to a domain? Or if we know the internal domain through OSINT, does the domain, the user domain, equal this, or does it contain this kind of thing? And if it does, then don't detonate, right? As a way to bypass, different protections, sandboxes, those types of things, as well as to not infect devices that are kind of out of scope, if you will. So.
Okay. So it doesn't sound like, even, we come out to the other side of this and, there's a possibility there's going to be a lot more working from home or sort of more remote setups, but it doesn't sound like red team operations are really going to have to adjust their strategies that much.
Not too much.
With the economy and everything. Okay.
Yep.
So from a red team leader's point of view, are there any suggestions you might have for these currently scattered organizations to make sure that their temporarily displaced staff or ID departments aren't in inadvertently, creating huge security crises?
Yeah, I mean, that everybody, even though we're currently in a crisis, and I would say even more so now because people are standing up services as quickly as they can to kind of enable their business to continue when
Right.
historically they haven't been a work from home organization. But we've had a couple clients that have had budget for different types of security things that have told us, hey, we've got to put this on hold because we had to buy a whole bunch of laptops for our people because our people didn't have laptops before, right? So in doing so, they've stood up, Citrix gateways or RDP gateways or VPNs or those types of things. And anytime that anyone rushes through something and they don't, slow down, be methodical, and plan it out, they're going to introduce issues, right? And those security issues, and currently in this day and age, can be catastrophic for an organization. So I would tell organizations to continue to think through the things that they're doing. And slow down and actually plan it out instead of just slapping stuff together to enable the business. That even if they have a few more hours or another day or even another week, that extra time is going to bode well for them, right, from a security standpoint.
Right.
Additionally, if organizations are standing up new services, then they should definitely consider to have external pen tests done. And if there's budget for it, to do red team operations so they could understand basically where the rubber meets the road. How secure am I if, an opportunistic attacker comes after me or, a cybercrime group, specifically targets your organization because they think that you're, a weak one of the herd. So
right.
I don't see any less importance in the current day and age, but the economy and budget is a factor, right? But
Sure.
I don't think it's any less important.
Okay. So as we wrap up today, let's just tell me a bit about the SpiderLabs team at Trustwave and what it's all about and what some of the exciting projects you have going on right now.
Cool. Yeah. So we're the SpiderLabs division is a global offensive testing organization, and we do basically everything under the sun from a lack of better analogies from an offensive testing perspective, right? We do everything from ATM and SCADA and mainframe style pen testing to the standard, net pen, web application, mobile, wireless. We do physicals and, all that kind of stuff, the standard range of penetration testing activities. Additionally, we have developers on staff who can do code reviews and those types of things, but it all comes down to kind of an offensive testing arena. We also do the high level red team, purple team, collaboration style, adversary simulation engagements. And we are a global organization, and we've got kind of hotspots all across the world. We've got a big presence in APJ market. We've got a big presence in the EMEA market, and we've got a big presence here in the Americas market as well. So we can kind of meet an organization's need on a global scale.
Okay. And one last question as ever, if listeners want to know more about John Cartrett or Trustwave, where can they go online?
So I would say the easiest way to find me is either from my GitHub repository or on LinkedIn. I'm not usually a big social media guy. I do have a Twitter account, but I don't do a lot of posting and whatnot. My hacker handle, if you will, from a GitHub perspective is John Q Public. But if you search my name, just John Cartrett, it'll be one of the first things that comes up.
All right, John, thank you so much for your time and insights today. This was awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
All right. And thank you all for listening and watching. If you enjoyed today's video, you can find many more on our YouTube page. Just go to youtube.com and type in Cyberwork with Infosec to check out a collection of tutorials, interviews, and past webinars. If you'd rather have us in your ears during your audio or during your workday, all of our videos are also available as audio podcasts. Just search Cyberwork with Infosec in your podcast catcher of choice. And for a free month of our Infosec skills platform, just go to infosecinstitute.com/skills and sign up for an account. In the coupon line, type Cyberwork, all one word, no, all small letters and no spaces, to get your free month. Thank you once again to John Cartrett, and thank you all for watching and listening. We will speak to you next week.